Hello there, my sweet dumpling sugar bushes, and welcome to another episode of Fabulous True Crime. Today we are going to go over the Jonestown Massacre. Now, I really enjoy this case because I love reading about cults and things of that nature. They're just very interesting to me, the manipulation tactics these cult leaders use, and the blindness to follow somebody like that and just basically give them everything they want and everything they ask for. I've done a lot of research on Jonestown prior to starting my true crime stuff, but I decided to go back and give a refresher course and actually learn some things I didn't know. But let's dive right in. Of course, here's your disclaimer. This involves murder, stuff like that. You know, you probably wouldn't be here unless you were into that, but I gotta get that out of the way. So Jim Jones founded the People's Temple in Indiana around the 1950s, and then they relocated to California in the 1960s. Jim Jones was very charismatic. He kind of, not at first, but he was intentionally kind of labeling himself as like a prophet, a messiah. He started gathering, he started getting a large congregation coming to coming to the People's Temple. He often did healings. Like there's one video you can find where he cuts the cast off a woman's leg and it's like, oh, that leg was broken yesterday, but today she's running on it, blah, blah, blah. And of course they were just staged healings. They were paid people to come in and act like Jim Jones was healing them, and that further pushed this narrative that he was a prophet from God, he was a messiah, and that these people should follow him. Now do keep in mind that during this time, America was at civil unrest with the civil rights movement and things of that nature. So there was a lot of fear being instilled into the average American, and he saw that, and he did a really good job at playing it as he is the person who's going to bring you home. He's the person that's going to keep you safe. The world is in an uncertain place right now. Come to me and I will keep you safe and I will make sure you are well taken care of. Now this sat well with a lot of people because, like I said, fear, people were afraid at this point in time. And as his congregation grew and grew and grew, people were signing over their paychecks to him. They were putting him in their will, signing off their estates to him, pretty much just giving him everything he wanted because they believed that he was this prophet and that he was this messiah and he was going to lead them to the promised land. So around the 1970s, he started the People's Temple Agricultural Project, also known as Jonestown. Now, Jonestown was located in Guyana in South America, and he marketed it as basically a utopia where we can all live in peace. There's no hate, there's no racial bias, no, and you can come live a happy and free life. You'll never be bothered. It was what he, like I said, he marketed it as a utopia, and to someone with what was going on in America, people living in fear, that sat well with him. That's something they wanted to do initially. And like I said, Jim Jones was very good at telling you what you wanted to hear. He figured out what you were most afraid of, and he figured out what your insecurities were, and he played on that. He was very good at it, so people would blindly follow him. So in 1977, the People's Temple heads off to Guyana and starts a Jonestown, basically. Now you gotta understand that some of these people were just dropping everything and leaving. They were leaving their entire families behind, and that didn't sit well with a lot of relatives because, there were also people that knew that this was a cult and Jim Jones was a fraud. Jim Jones himself knew he was a fraud. He was just terrified of anyone else finding out he was a fraud. And even before they left to Guyana, there was already rumors being spread about physical abuse, sexual abuse, drugging people within the People's Temple and things of that nature. And once they left to Guyana, it just got worse from there. Now at the start, everything seemed perfect. They built their own commune, everyone worked, everyone loved each other, and it seemed, as he marketed it, a utopia. So like I said, it was the people saw it as a utopia, but slowly and surely they started realizing it wasn't quite that. Now don't get me wrong, majority of the people were happy where they were, but they worked long hours building the commune. They worked long hours taking care of the commune. Oftentimes Jim Jones would call over the loudspeaker for a white night, which basically was an emergency situation that had to be taken care of right now, and that everybody had to go to the pavilion so they could talk about the situation. And Jim Jones usually used white nights to keep people tired, so they would be distraught and wouldn't have much time to think of anything else but work. And it also allowed him to give these speeches to instill fear on his followers. He would say that the rumors that they were hearing from the States about Jonestown was just a big government conspiracy because the government didn't like their socialist and Marxist ideas, and that the government wanted to bring him down. So he just basically labeled everything as a government conspiracy, which more so played onto the fear of his followers. Along with the White Knight, Jim Jones's practices were to create a community of fear. You know, it's kind of like an onion. All the beautiful, fun things are on the outside, but as you get deeper into the layers, it's solely based around fear. He needed to keep people scared so nobody would leave. Also, at these White Nights that he would regularly call, they would do things from, you know, pledge their allegiance to Jonestown, basically. They would practice mass suicides. They would talk about, at some point, maybe having to do a mass suicide. And I also want to put this out there. Jonestown is sometimes regarded as one of the largest mass suicides to happen. That's not true. Jonestown was not a mass suicide. Jonestown was a murder. Plain and simple, that's what it was. It was a murder. Like I said, people thought it was a utopia, but as always, there are some people that do want to leave, that do not think that change their mind and want to go home. That was not that easy. Now, oftentimes when people hear this story, they think, well, why don't they just leave? Why don't they just get up in the night and take off? Like, let's just leave. It wasn't that simple. I used to be one of those people that thought that too until I did more research. Often there were men, heavily armed guards that would roam around Jonestown's perimeter with guns to make sure nobody defected. Jim Jones often walked around with bodyguards as well. You know, it's one of those things, if this is such a good utopia and it's the perfect place ever, why do you need these men with guns to continue to instill fear on your followers? So as time went on, Jim Jones's health was steadily declining. He was abusing multiple substances, and he was losing his mental state, which scared some of his followers. They kind of saw it as well, but they dare not question him because there had been instances of people questioning Jim Jones's word or trying to leave, and they would often get taken and brutally beaten and tortured and then released back to the congregation. So the congregation knew if you try to defect, you try to question our prophet's words, this is what's going to happen to you. So again, back in the States, relatives of the people, some of the people in Jonestown are starting to get worried. They're starting to kind of question, is this everything that they say it is? We need to go and investigate. Now, inside Jonestown, there were people who wanted to defect, but they were too scared to say anything. Among these people were a man by the name of Vern and a woman by the name of Monica. Now, Vern confided in his roommate that he did not want to be here, and his roommate had actually done the same, but in public, and was brutally beaten for it. So Vern confided in his roommate that he didn't want to be there, or his bunkmate, because they slept in like 5 to a house, and his roommate told a woman, Monica, that Vern didn't want to be here. So Monica and Vern kind of team up and like, we need to come up with a plan to get out of here. So like I said, back in the States, relatives are starting to get worried about their family members they have in Jonestown, and that's when a congressman by the name of Leo J. Ryan decides, well, you know what, we're going to go see what this is all about. We're going to take like NBC News and a couple reporters and photographers, as well as the relatives that want to go rescue their loved ones, or rescue, because they weren't sure if what they were reading was true or if it was just, you know, an image that Jim Jones was trying to create. And they decided that they're going to go to Guyana and see what the real deal is. So November 14th of 1978, Congressman Ryan, as well as the relatives and the reporters, hop on a plane and head to South America to see if they can be granted access into Guyana. Now, this was terrifying to Jim Jones because it had the potential for exposing what was actually going on there. He saw it in a bad image if people wanted to defect from Jonestown. You know, he saw it as like he would be seen as weak. His image, his dream would be seen as a fraud if people, you know, he markets this huge, beautiful utopia, then there's people who want to defect, and maintaining his image and his facade as a prophet was the most important thing to him. And like I said, there were people who did want to defect, they wanted to leave, and again, Jonestown was regularly patrolled by armed guards. And not only that, there was nowhere to go if you decided to run away. I often thought that like, oh, just leave, just get out of there, like I said prior. But Georgetown, the closest city to Jonestown, was 150 miles away. And it wasn't just 150 miles walking down a road. You had to walk through dense forest and dense trees to get there. There was no way those people who were overworked, they were malnourished, were going to make that journey. So in Georgetown, the People's Temple had a house that they had bought in Georgetown that was their HQ, that was their headquarters. Very few groups stayed there. There was radio transmissions between Jim Jones and Jonestown, and a woman by the name of Sharon, who was like his right hand that operated at the HQ. So Congressman Ryan, the reporters, the relatives get on a plane, they fly to Guyana. At the same time, Jim Jones' son, I think his name was Stephen, they had formed a basketball team. He had pleaded to his father to let them form a basketball team because there wasn't, he wasn't really in the business of letting people have fun unless there were cameras around or unless there was a reporter there. So they formed this basketball team, and he convinces his dad to let them go to Georgetown to play against Georgetown's basketball team in a series of scrimmages. So on November 15th, Congressman Ryan, once they land, they head to Jonestown headquarters in Georgetown, where Jonestown's son is there, as well as Sharon and a few others, and Congressman Ryan walks in, and right off the rip, Sharon's like, get the f*** out. Because she knows, Jim Jones is not going to be happy that Congressman Ryan is here. And Stephen, Jim Jones' son, was telling a story and basically said, whenever I left Jonestown, my mom, who, Jim Jones' wife, was a very sensible woman, but she was still, blindly following her husband. And she knew that may be the last time she ever sees her son, because she wanted more than anything for him to get out. She didn't want him to be in this environment. Like I said, Jim Jones' health was in a steady decline. He was slowly losing his sanity, and he was abusing tons of substances, so it was only a matter of time before everything crumbled. So as Congressman Ryan goes into HQ and it's basically talks to Sharon, and it's like, I want to go to Jonestown and talk to everybody. I want to see what's going on. I want to get the real stories. These relatives I've brought want to see their family members. And so Sharon gets on the radio and it's basically like, talks to Jim Jones. And he's mad. He wants his son in the basketball team to come back. His son refuses to come back. And Jim Jones' lawyer, the lawyer for the People's Temple, was basically like, Jim, you've got two options. One, you can tell these people to get lost. But if you do that, and you can tell the congressmen, the reporters, and the family members, they all just can go home. They're not getting into Jonestown. But if you do that, I will no longer be here. I will no longer be on your side. Or you can do what I've been telling you to do. Let them come into Jonestown, let them see the beautiful place we've built, let the family members see their loved ones, and show them that, none of the rumors are true. So Jim Jones reluctantly allows the congressmen and the relatives and such to come to Jonestown. Now, one of the relatives on the plane that were with Congressman, his daughter, his ex-wife was actually Sharon, Jim Jones's, right hand basically over at HQ, and she had taken their daughter to Jonestown with her, and he was there to see his daughter. So he didn't actually go to Jonestown because his daughter and was at the HQ, and that's all who he wanted to see. His ex-wife Sharon, her name was actually Linda. But there was another woman in the People's Temple named Linda, and the two Lindas didn't get along, so Jim Jones decided that nobody was allowed to be named Linda anymore, so she changed her name to Sharon. So November 17th, Jim Jones allows the congressmen and the reporters and such to come in. He agrees to an interview with NBC and the other reporters that were there. Pictures are being taken. Now before he let them in, he held another white night, which basically he went over with his followers. What are you going to say when they ask you this? What are you going to say when they ask you about this? And people were like, oh, I'm going to tell them, this is the greatest place ever, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, what are you going to say when they ask about the United States? And someone was like, well, I'm just going to tell them, the United States is fine if folks, want to live there. And he was like, good, we don't want to say anything bad about the United States. We don't want to seem like we're a terrorist organization, stuff like that. So basically he rehearsed everything with his followers, what to tell the press. They had a whole cleaning day where they got the town in tip-top shape. They worked tirelessly to make it look as presentable as possible. Then, after he was sure his followers would not, tell them the real story behind Jonestown, the regular beatings, the armed guards, stuff like that, he allowed the congressmen and the relatives to come in. He allowed to do a interview with the press. And so once everybody gets there, they start talking, they're going around, loved ones are seeing loved ones. The gentleman whose ex-wife was Jim Jones's right hand, stays back at HQ because he doesn't need to go to Jonestown because he's already got plans to see his daughter. So they start talking, and Congressman Ryan's going around asking everybody, how do you like it here? What's the living conditions like? Give me the story, this, that, and the other. So Jim Jones allows NBC to interview him. Some of the people that were with NBC was Bob Flick, who was a producer, Don Harris, who was a journalist, Bob Brown, who was a cameraman, and Steve Sung, who was a sound engineer, along with a few other various entities of the press. So during these interviews, it's quite apparent that Jim Jones is kind of losing his sanity. He goes on these long rants and kind of stares off into space. They can tell his health is in somewhat of a decline. He went from being this super charismatic guy to kind of this hollow husk, someone who went on these frequent ramblings of shit that didn't make any sense. But ultimately, he was trying to spread the message that, I don't want to bother anybody. We're just out here living our life. Let us live our life. Blah, 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 blah. You know how it goes. So that night, while they are attending a congregation under the pavilion, there's a lot of singing, dancing, and Congressman Ryan is giving a speech, stuff like that. Vern and Monica came up with a plan that they are going to slip a note to Congressman Ryan, basically stating, my name is Vern, so-and-so, my name is Monica, we want to leave Jonestown. Vern, though, is unsure of who Congressman Ryan is. It's not apparent who he is. He can tell what group he's in because of, what they're wearing, but he's not sure who the actual congressman is. So he makes his move to go slip this note, but unbeknownst to him, he accidentally slips it to journalist Don Harris. So Don Harris looks at this note and it basically just says, Dear Congressman, me and another Temple member, please help us get out of Jonestown. So Don Harris gets that note to Congressman Ryan, and Congressman Ryan basically talks to Vern and is like, don't worry, we're going to take you with us. We're going to get you out of here. The note was seen when Vern slipped the note to Don Harris. He, one of the guards that were not armed at the time was watching, brought him over and basically was like, what was that all about? And Vern was like, oh, he just dropped something, I gave it back to him, blah, 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 blah. To kind of get the heat off his back. The next day, whenever, the festivities got done, Jim Jones informed the Don Harris and Bob Flick and, NBC as well as Congressman Ryan, oh, we don't have any lodging for you. You're going to have to stay in a little village off the way, and then you'll be back in the morning. So November 18th, they show back up. Jim Jones's wife gives them a tour of the settlement again, and she's very proud of, the nursery, the babies that have been born at Jonestown, things of that nature. They do more interviews with Jim Jones. It becomes very apparent that he's starting to crack under the pressure of them being there, under the pressure of people in his congregation wanting to leave. He believed that those people leaving would spread lies about Jonestown and would ultimately be the reason Jonestown fell. The information they were probably going to spread wasn't lies, it was what was actually happening in Jonestown. So as Congressman Ryan is walking around Jonestown and such, more families are coming forward and saying, I want to leave, please help me get out of here. And he full and well plans to take them all with him. At this time, Vern and Monica are packing up their things to leave on the plane with Congressman Ryan. The lawyer for Jonestown comes up and makes Vern sign the rights away to his child. He had a 4-year-old son there at Jonestown. He makes Vern sign away the rights to his child before he could leave. That's kind of fucked up that you would leave your kid there. I understand your mindset, being brainwashed and manipulated so hard like that. It's, you're not thinking right, but still, I'll leave you guys to decide what your opinion on him is. But he signs away the rights to his kid. They're all now hopping in a truck to go back to the airstrip. Congressman Ryan has decided he's going to stay back and talk with more families that want to defect, and once the truck comes back, he'll go on the next trip. That's when an attempt on Congressman Ryan's life is made, and he decides, well, maybe, I should just go with the first truck. And they said it put it into a real perspective of seeing Congressman Ryan with blood on his shirt. They believe they had the protection of the United States Congress, which, technically they do, but that's not going to stop you from being killed. If someone's going to kill you, they're going to kill you. So that kind of scared everybody. So they're loading this truck up with families that want to leave. Vern is on it. Monica is on it as well. Congressman Ryan, the news reporters, things of that nature. After the attempt on Congressman Ryan's life had been made, he had been tagged, so he hops on the truck. Then a man by the name of Larry Layton hops on the truck and is like, oh, I want to go home, this, that, and the other. Vern is immediately very suspicious of Larry. He talks to one of the news reporters, basically says, there's no way that guy's a defector. You need to keep an eye on him. So they get back to the airstrip. Now, once the attempt on Congressman Ryan's life had been made, Jim Jones was like, well, I guess this kind of changes things, doesn't it? And Congressman Ryan was like, a few things, but not much. After that had happened and they had left and headed back to the airstrip, Jim Jones finally breaks. He puts out a call for revenge. Basically, he calls HQ in Georgetown and basically says, it's happening. Like, it's, everything we practice for, it's happening right now. You need to get revenge on the people there in HQ, and then after that, you need to take your own life. Like I said before that, he had tried to call his son back to Jonestown, and his son said, no, I'm not going. But after, basically Jim Jones was asking Sharon and his son to take revenge on the people from the press and the relatives that were at HQ, and Sharon's ex-husband was there with his daughter, visiting with his daughter, and she basically comes in and pulls his daughter out and says, listen, this is what has happened. It is now, we need, it's time. You need to let, tell your father to leave. So she goes back in and tells her father, oh, what do you want to, we'll see each other tomorrow. What time? 7 a.m. works for me. And then afterwards, they go outside. He gets in a taxi, and his ex-wife kisses him on the cheek goodbye. And he even stated in an interview, he was like, when my ex-wife kissed me on the cheek, I had a feeling, I was on cloud 9 at the time, but that seemed very off to me. I didn't know why she did that. So back at Jonestown, they call a white night. Everybody comes in. They start mixing together basically sedatives, cyanide, and sugar, like a Kool-Aid basically. There's actually the audio recordings from Jim Jones's last speech. You can find them, and I'll play a little bit, but it's very eerie because in the beginning you hear all these people talking. He's talking about, committing this act of mass suicide, and some people are saying, yeah, amen, and some people are very against it. And then near the end of the audio recording, it's just him talking because everybody else has died. So they're mixing together this drink, and often it's referred to Jonestown being one of the biggest mass suicides, but Jonestown was not a suicide. Jonestown was a murder, plain and simple. It was a massacre. Some members did willingly drink this concoction that was going to kill them, but ultimately most of them did not want to die. So back at the airstrip, Jim Jones has sent a truck full of men. Basically, it was a tractor pulling a trailer that had full of men in it. They pull up to the airstrip, and one of the members of the groups getting on the plane, Congressman Ryan's group, jokingly said, well, there may be a little bit of violence happening. So as Jones's guards started opening fire, they ended up killing Congressman Ryan, who is actually the only congressman to be killed in the line of duty in the history of the U.S. San Francisco Examiner Greg Robinson was murdered. NBC cameraman Bob Brown his life was also taken, and then NBC journalist Don Harris was also killed in these attacks. 9 others, and as well as a defector from Jonestown by the name of Patricia Parks. 9 others of the group were wounded during these attacks, and as Vern is getting on one of the smaller planes, Larry Layton had actually brought a gun with him and began opening fire as well, and Vern was shot but managed to escape, basically proving Vern right that Larry Layton was a defector, but he was a spy working for Jim Jones. But Larry Layton opened fire, it ended up hitting Vern, but Vern ended up running into the woods or the forest and passing out and woke up hours and hours later. One of the NBC reporters said, he ran into the forest and hid, and he could hear, I think he was shot in the hand, but he could also hear, after the gunfire had settled, he heard Jones's men going amongst the people that were actually killed and didn't get away, placing deliberate shots in their head to make sure they're dead. The men then loaded back onto the trailer and headed back to Jonestown. So now that they've got basically, they're mixing up the cyanide, and cyanide is, he basically told his followers, it'll be quick, it'll be painless, it'll be like falling asleep. He said that since some of their members had killed the congressman, pretty much acting like they had done it on their own free will, that he did not order this killing, which he did, that their way of life was going to be taken away. They were a threat. Now the United States was a threat to them, and they would rather go out on their own terms than be taken out by the United States. He basically told his followers, the U.S. Military is going to come here, it's going to kill us all, and I would rather go out on my own than be killed by them. And like I said, some people were for it, but majority was not for it. So then it started, they started with children first. They made the children drink the cyanide, and immediately, it's like I said, it's not a painless way of dying. Cyanide basically blocks the cells of the body from using oxygen, so it's not It's not a painless death, and it's not like a quick death like he marketed it as. Like I said in the recording, you can listen to, once they start drinking the cyanide, you can hear the babies screaming and the children screaming because of the effects taking hold of them. Like I said, some people did willingly take it, but majority of them had to be forced to. They had to be, you know, injected with the cyanide because they would refuse to drink it. Jim Jones's wife basically protested the entire thing, and once all the children had been murdered, which, you know, was like her pride and joy, the nursery was her pride and joy. She loved taking care of the kids, and once all the children were murdered, she willingly walked up and drank the cyanide and took her own life. And at the root of it all, Jim Jones was a coward through and through. There's no other word to describe him except for being a coward. Jim Jones could not stand the thought of leaving this world by himself. You know, there was no other option in his mind besides, I'm going to take my entire congregation with me, whether by force or whether they're willing. So he basically injects cyanide or he has his armed guards inject cyanide to people. He makes them drink it. Jim Jones was so much of a coward that, one, he didn't even take the cyanide like the rest of his congregation did, and like he forced the majority of his congregation to. He ordered one of his armed guards to shoot him in the head because he was too much of a coward to do it himself. Back at HQ, after Sharon's ex-husband had left, Sharon took her daughter, as well as her other two children she had at the time, went up into the second floor of the headquarters, murdered her children, and then her and her daughter slit each other's throats and killed themselves. At the time, Jim Jones's son had came back, and someone came out of the house, and basically, you know, Sharon's killed her kids and herself. He went to investigate for himself and saw that was true, which he realized that the same thing must have happened back in Jonestown. All in total, 909 people died that day, and a third of that were very, very young children. A few people did manage to escape. I think the survivor count was around 33. Some of them ran into the woods and escaped that way. I know a few, one of the elderly women at Jonestown hid under her bed when Jones called for the White Knight. What's insane is that even though Congressman Ryan told them, like, hey, and the reporters told him, you know, we're still going to put, like, Jonestown in a positive image because what we've seen, you know, it's not that, you know, people love it here. But even though the reporters insisted that they were going to put Jonestown in a positive, you know, a somewhat positive light, Jim Jones still insisted that I have failed this congregation, I have failed the People's Temple, all hope is lost now. And Jim Jones was just the worst person, you know, just an awful human being, from, you know, taking his followers' possessions and paychecks and stuff to paying lawyers $6,000 to continue to spin narratives of conspiracies against him that he could then use to keep his followers living in fear. You know, after the mass murder, basically, the bodies of the dead were shipped back to the states. Larry Layton was actually one of the only person who was convicted of any crime that happened in Jonestown. He was put on trial in Guyana's court and was acquitted, but then he was extradited back to the United States, where he was put on a trial again for a different set of crimes that still pertain to the Jonestown Massacre, and was ultimately sentenced after that. But he is the only person that ever paid any kind of, like, had any kind of punishment for what happened in Jonestown. The site where Jonestown once stood has pretty much already been reclaimed by nature in the forest. It's heavily dense and overgrown. There was a group that went back there not too long ago, I don't think, and they could hardly, you know, recover anything from the site, any kind of artifacts, because of how much the forest had taken over where Jonestown once stood. But that is the story of the Jonestown Massacre. There's a whole lot more to it. I couldn't get to everything, or this video would be insanely long, but there's a lot more to it if you want to do your own research. You know, cults and stuff like that always fascinated me, but now we need to pick a topic for next week. So we're going to get to our murder pot here, give it a little shake and a shake and a shake, pull the lid off, more rummaging, and then, what is that, one? Oh, okay, the largest child kidnapping. I don't remember the actual name for this one, so that's what I put. But it's this is a really interesting story, actually. I actually really like this one. So next week we're going to go over the largest child kidnapping. It's super interesting, very, very movie-esque, so to speak. But that is the next true crime we are going to be going over. If you have a crime story, serial killer, whatever cult you want covered, put it in the comments below, and we'll add it to our murder pot and continue drawing out until we finish off the pot. If you enjoyed these videos, consider giving me a like and a subscribe. That would be awesome. I love making this content for you guys. We have the podcast coming soon, Snacks Pack. I'm getting 2 more episodes recorded, then I will release it to the public on a hosting site. Once that happens, I will let you know. You can go to snacksandofficial.com and sign up for our email list to get all the latest notifications on what we got cooking. And you can join our Coven. The Discord link will be in the description of this video, as well as a link to all my other social medias to keep up with the regular content that I put out. Thank you guys so much for the support. I love you so much. Be safe, be kind to others, most of all be kind to yourself, wear a mask, and I hope you have the best day ever.
How very much I've loved you. How very much I've tried my best to give you the good life. But in spite of all of that I've tried, a handful of our people with their lies have made our life impossible. Not only are there those who have left and committed the betrayal of the century, some have stolen children from others and they're in pursuit right now to kill them because they stole their children. It was said by the greatest of prophets from time immemorial, no man takes my life from me, I lay my life down. So to sit here and wait for the catastrophe that's going to happen on that airplane, it's going to be a catastrophe. Almost happened here. Almost happened. The congressman was nearly killed here. But you can't steal people's children. You can't take off with people's children without expecting a violent reaction. If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace. What's going to happen here in a matter of a few minutes is that one of those people on that plane is going to shoot the pilot. I know that. I didn't plan it, but I know it's going to happen. They're going to shoot that pilot, and down comes that plane into the jungle. And we had better not have any of our children left when it's over, because they'll parachute in here on us. I'm telling you just as plain as I know how to tell you. I've never lied to you. I never have lied to you. Take the portion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly, because we are not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act. We can't go back, but if our children are left, we are going to have them butchered. Yes, Christine?
Is it too late for Russia?
Here's why it's too late for Russia. They killed. They started to kill. That's why it makes it too late for Russia. Otherwise, I'd said, Russia, you bet your life. But it's too late. I can't control these people. They're out there. They've gone with their guns, and it's too late. Yajara's mother has been lying on him and trying to break up this family, and they've all agreed to kill us by any means necessary. You think I'm going to deliver them, Yajara? Not on your life. No. But to me, death is not a fearful thing. It's living this treachery.
I think that there were too few who left for 1,200 people to give them their lives for those people that left.
You know how many left?
20 odd. That's a small
20 odd. 20 odd. Then he'll destroy himself. I'm speaking here not as the administrator. I'm speaking as a prophet today. I wouldn't step in this seat and talk so serious if I didn't know what I was talking about. I made my expression. I made my manifestation, and the world was ready, not ready for me. Paul said, I was a man born out of due season. I've been born out of due season just like all we are, and the best testimony we can make is to leave this goddamn world. Please. No man didn't take our life right now. He hadn't taken it, but when they start parachuting out of the air, they'll shoot some of our innocent babies. I don't want to see this, Christine, because they got to shoot me to get through to some of these people.
Ready to go. If you tell us we have to give our lives now, we're ready. I'm pretty sure all the rest of the sisters and brothers are with me.
Talking, the congressman has been murdered. Please get us some medication. It's simple. There's no convulsions with it. It's just simple. Just please get it. Before it's too late, the GDF will be here. I tell you, get moving. Yeah. Don't be afraid to die. If these people land out here, they'll torture some of our children here. They'll torture our people. They'll torture our seniors. We cannot have this. Are you going to separate yourself from whoever shot the congressman? I don't know who shot him.
And the others to endure long enough in a safe place to write about the goodness of Jim Jones?
I don't know how in the world they're ever going to write about us. It's just too late. It's too late. The congressman's dead. The congressman's aide's dead. Many of our traitors are dead. They're all laying out there dead.
I said, if there's any way you can do to have them to give Ted something so he won't have to let him go too, okay? And I'm satisfied.
That's fine. Ted, yes.
Because I said I never wanted to live with you guys. And I appreciate you for everything. You're the only, and I appreciate you.
Please, can we hasten? Can we hasten with that medication? You don't know what you've done.
Aren't crying from pain. It's just a little bitter tasting, but they're not crying out of any pain.
I just want to say something to everyone that I see that is standing around and crying. This is nothing to cry about. This is something we should all rejoice about. We should be happy about this.
We're trying. If everybody will relax, the best thing you do to relax, then you'll have no problem. You'll have no problem with the thing if you just relax.
Of the children here, a great deal because of Jim Jones. And the way the children are laying there now, I'd rather see them lay like that than to see them have to die like the Jews did, which was pitiful anyhow. And I'd just like to thank Dad for giving us life and also death. And I appreciate the fact, the way our children are going. Because like Dad said, when they come in, what they're going to do to our children, they're going to massacre our children. And also the ones that they take captured, they're going to just let them grow up and be dummies like they want them to be, and not grow up to be associates like the one and only Jim Jones. So I'd like to thank Dad for our opportunity for letting Jonestown be not what it could be, but what Jonestown is. Thank you, Dad.
Calm, let's get calm, let's get calm. To us, we had nothing we could do. We can't separate ourselves from our own people. For 20 years laying in some old rotten nursing home. Free at last. Peace. Keep your emotions down. Keep your emotions down. Children, it will not hurt if you'll be quiet. If you'll be quiet. It's never been done before, you say. It's been done by every tribe in history. Every tribe facing annihilation. All the Indians of the Amazon are doing it right now. They refuse to bring any babies into the world. They kill every child that comes into the world because they don't want to live in this kind of a world. So be patient, be patient. Death is I tell you, I don't care how many screams you hear, I don't care how many anguished cries. Death is a million times preferable to 10 more days of this life. Jim Cobb is laying on the airfield dead at this moment. Remember, Oliver woman said she'd come over and kill me if her sons wouldn't stop her. These are the people, the peddlers of hate. All we're doing is laying down our life. We're not letting them take our life. We're laying down our life. We're seeking their lives. We just want peace.
All I'd like to say is that my so-called parents was filled with so much hate. And treachery. I think you people out here should think about how your relatives was and be glad about that the children are being laid to rest. And all I like to say is I thank Dad for making me strong to stand with it all and make me ready for it. Thank you.
Talking to them, all they're doing is taking a drink to go to sleep. That's what death is, sleep. I'm tired of it all.
Loving thing he could have ever done, the most loving thing all of us could have done. And it's been a pleasure walking with all of you in this revolutionary struggle. No other way I would rather go and give my life for socialism, communism. And I thank Dad very, very much.
That Dad's love and mercy and goodness and kindness and bringing us to this land of freedom. His love, his mother was the advance guard to socialism. And his love and his mercy should go on forever, on to the fields of
Where's the vat? Where's the vat with the green sea?
Should go on forever to the fields of pine. And thank you, Dad.
The vat with the green sea in, please. Bring it here so the adults can begin. Beg you, don't fail to follow my advice. You'll be sorry. You'll be sorry. That we do it and that they do it. Must trust you. You have to step across. We used to sing this world's not our home. Well, it sure isn't. As we were saying, it sure wasn't. He doesn't want to tell him. All he's doing, if they will tell him, assure these children. Some people assure these children of the relaxation of stepping over to the next plane. We've set an example for others. We've set 1,000 people who say we don't like the way the world is. Take our life from us. We laid it down. We got tired. We didn't commit suicide. We committed an act of revolutionary suicide protesting the conditions of an inhumane world.